Hi, friends, and welcome to this week's 10 to 20 Talk Radio. I am Kristen Dokas, and today we're going to discuss when your teen starts driving. And with me today is Chuck Hawks, who's the CEO of Teen Driving Solutions, and where this is a place where they strive to change attitudes about driving through real-life-based training focused on safe, responsible driving behaviors. Hey, Chuck.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's going great.
You sound wonderful. I'm glad we took the time for you to hook up your machine. Microphone.
Well, thank you for thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited. I'm a big fan, as you well know. So tell everybody that doesn't know you, like I do, a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay. Well, I'm a professional driver. Was in professional racing since 1979. Retired twice. This time I'm officially retired for good. And I focus my attention now on teaching others how to drive. Not necessarily, well, I do teach people how to drive on a racetrack, but my big focus is teaching teens how to navigate our roads that are so much chaos these days safely and in a controlled manner. It's not like it was when we got our license when you're my age. Today, everybody out there on the road seems to be, they're in a rush, or at least they feel like they are, which makes them frustrated. So that's the worst thing to do when you're out there on the road is be frustrated. And then you throw in distraction like texting and all that other stuff on top of it. And then you also throw in the fact that most people out there on the road are looking out for themselves and themselves only. And now you take these poor teens, which have gone through driver's education, which is somewhat of an oxymoron in this country these days, and give them very little education and very little experience, and you throw them out there in that situation, and the chaos is just magnified. So it's really unfair what we're doing to these poor teens these days.
Well, you kind of answered a few of my questions, but I want to go into some of them a little bit in depth, because a lot of parents, let's just go straight from kind of segue off of what you were talking about, which is, what are the other changes that you've seen in the past, 10 or 15 years? I know when I learned to drive, it was driver's ed, and that was it. And, and the other thing too that I've noticed, having lived across the United States, is there's a big variance in when kids are allowed to drive. Here in North Carolina, they start driver's ed at 14 and a half. They can get their permit at 15, and they can get their driver's license 1 year to the date after they get their permit. We're right now in the almost to the point where our oldest will get her after 9s. So let's talk a little bit about how some of the things and laws have changed before we get into what's broken about driver's ed itself.
Okay. Well, first off, the roads are the roads are way more crowded than they were, again, when older people, and certainly the drivers that are out there even today that are just getting their license, their parents, the roads are more crowded today than they were when those Gen X parents got their license. They're the 30-somethings and the 20-somethings. So we continue to put more and more cars on the road. So that's certainly changed. When I got my license, the most distraction we had in the car was the radio. And, in those days, a radio was 2 big knobs on either end and 5 manual push buttons, and that was about it.
Right.
You were lucky if you had a tachometer in your car or RPM gauge. Mm-hmm. So today, the cars themselves have changed. There's lots more gadgetry and gizmos and pretty touch screens and things like that in the car. So the automobile itself has changed drastically, and it's inviting our attention away from the road and into the interior of the car. You throw in the cell phones that didn't exist, or at least I can remember the big 12-pound bag phone. I had one of those. That's a major distraction that everybody's aware of. But nobody's really thinking about all this technology we're putting in the cars. So you've got crowded roads, you've got multiple distractions that invite our attention away, and then of course you've got that everybody's in a rush attitude. We just society in general just seems to keep speeding up and speeding up and speeding up. So we add to that frustration of being on crowded roads and being in a rush. Now everybody's mindset is, there's so many things that didn't used to exist that is calling our attention away from what we're there to do, which is navigate the road and drive the car. So all of that has changed. But Also the laws. We've got graduated driver's license policy in almost every state now, which the philosophy is that we're going to give the new driver a segmented experience in order to gain experience in different driving styles. And I don't disagree with that. The problem is research has actually indicated that all we've done is kick the can down the road. The graduated driver's license policy has, in fact, reduced teen deaths by about 20%. The number kind of floats between 18 and 20% each year. Where the issue comes is the 18 to 21-year-old death rate has increased by almost 40%.
Wow.
And the reason for this, that most of us in this industry believe, and all the studies and everything seem to indicate, is there's a lot of teens out there because the graduated driver's license process it varies from state to state. There's no centralized standard, if you will. So every state is a little different, and the parents and the teens are looking at this going, do we really want to go through this process? I have to log when my teen is driving. I have to sign off on that. And there's a lot of parents that will even admit that they fudged the logs because they just don't have time to deal with it. And the teens look at this restriction level and go, the roads are so crowded. I'm perfectly happy letting mom or dad chauffeur me around until I'm 18, and I don't have to go through driver's ed. I don't have to go through GDL. I can just go down to the driver's license office, give them my birth certificate, have my picture taken, and now I've got a completely unrestricted license. So now they have no training, and they bypass the GDL, and they're going out there completely uneducated. So that's contributed to this huge increase in teen deaths between 18 and 21.
And that's a great point because, a lot of parents just strike it up to, laziness. And as far as, the kids, and I've never put the two and two together either, as far as the 18-year-olds. I have only known a couple of them, but it was that you would have never done that back when I was in high school.
Oh, no.
It was a rite of passage, man.
Absolutely.
You 16 years old. My dad made me wait till I was 16 and a half. So I was 16 and 6 months. But, there was none of this waiting. But I know a couple of kids that just had no interest. And the other thing, too, that goes along with that is the social media. They don't need to be, that was our escape, was get in our car and go to our friend's house. Whereas now they just, hole up in their room and they're instantly connected with their friends that way. They don't need to drive anywhere, and if they do, they can have somebody come pick them up.
Right. The world has gotten so much bigger and so much smaller at the same time, where our world was wherever we could go. Driver's license was considered freedom. That was, like you say, it was a rite of passage, and we saw it as an act of freedom. So in those days, when we wanted to go hang out with our friends, in my case, we wanted to go to the mall, so we all hung out at the mall. So we drove to the mall and we all hung out, and we either went inside the mall or we went out and performed some kind of mischief, which I won't mention, in our cars. But that's how we gathered. And today, like you said, social media allows us to have a much bigger world in a much smaller location. You can have your teens sitting on their bed in their bedroom communicating with their boyfriend or girlfriend who they've never even actually met in person because they're 2,000 miles away.
Yeah, no kidding. So what's wrong, let me rephrase that, not what's wrong with it. What are some of the challenges that you have witnessed and that you have with traditional high school-based or private-based driving schools, driver's ed?
Well, first off, the biggest thing, and I continue to kind of do a non-scientific study on this with our events, but I also do this study outside of our events, and that is asking teens, what did you do during your practical with your driver's ed teacher? Because, usually driver's ed requires between 6 and 20 hours of behind the wheel time with a driver's education teacher on the road, which is kind of crazy because they ask you to put 40 hours in the classroom, and it seems like that's backwards. But problem number one is they spend more time in the classroom without gaining the experience, because this is an experiential learning. It's not a classroom learning environment. But anyway, I ask, what did you do during your practical? Where did you go? And usually what I get is they ran errands. They went to the dry cleaners. They went through the drive-through to pick up lunch. They went to the driver educator's spouse's office to deliver some package. There's no structure, no plan. The driver's education teacher doesn't say, okay, today we're going out on the highway so that you learn higher speed skills in a situation where everyone is navigating, getting on and off of exit ramps and things like that. There's no structure like that for most driver's education teachers. Now, I don't want to beat up on them in general because there are some excellent driver education teachers out there. Driver's ed has a very, very low bar that they have to meet from the federal mandate and also from most states' mandates. And most driver's education companies only do the bare minimum. So they're not really learning that much. However, there are some driver educators out there that recognize that this is a problem and it could get some new drivers, regardless of their age, in trouble from just doing the bare minimum. So they go way above and beyond the call of duty. Some of those driver educators are actually instructors for us at Teen Driving Solutions. But the ones that are out there doing the bare minimum, they're teaching teens how to run errands, how to be a gopher. They're not teaching them how to drive. So they leave them with such a low experience level. When they turn them loose, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And if you ask these teens, even the boys who you would think would have the bravado, they will tell you, I'm scared to death to get out there in this chaos. And you add that fear, that fearful mindset, and that's a distraction as well. If they're terrified, they're distracted.
Okay, so I want to talk about something that really bothers me, and this is people are going to think that I'm just I'm not. I say this at least once every episode or every podcast is, I'm not judging other parents, but one of the things that makes me crazy is, it's like, especially on Facebook or in other areas of social media, is when a kid is getting to the point of getting ready to go through driver's ed, or they've got their permit. Every parent without fail will say something along these lines. Look out, everybody, so-and-so's blah, 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 and we're going to be on the road, so hide your children, and I'm like, now let's hear for a great vote of confidence to this kid now who's seeing
right.
And it makes me, and I'm not saying that I probably didn't, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Teen Driving Solutions in a second, but one of the biggest takeaways I had was like, it made me stop and look and like, how would that make me feel if someone like, hey, everybody, watch out, Kristen's got a computer and now she's I'm like, really? So let's talk a little bit about how the parent's attitude affects their child's driving experience.
Well, I'm gonna be pragmatic, and I'm also gonna get a little woo woo on you on this one.
I wish I had a soundboard so I could like go woo woo.
So first off, teens learn. Well, not teens. Children learn most of their life skills from the examples that their parents set for them. And whether they will admit it or not, they're always listening to what their parents say, and they're always doing their best, so to speak, to live up to what their parents put in front of them or speak to them or for them, etc. So if their parent is saying, look out, everybody, my son's about to get his driver's license and the roads are going to be a hazard now, what are they actually putting out there for their teen to live into? What precedent are they setting or expectation are they setting for their teen that their teen is actually going to go out and do in order to meet? Would they say that about math? Would they say that about their teen in, whatever vocation that their teen aspires to be in? Would they say that, look out, everybody, my teen's learning guitar, so, the music industry is going to be a terrifying industry and no more good music is ever going to come out anymore because my teen's going to be making a guitar sound terrible. Are they going to actually say that? So why in the world would they say that about being out on the roads? Number one, it's because they know and they recognize that driving is dangerous, that driving can get you hurt or killed. It's not like playing a guitar. You're not going to hurt yourself on a guitar other than when you're building calluses on your fretboard hand or whatever. But secondly, whether you like it, know it or not, the law of attraction is actually something that is, and it exists. Whether it is some kind of woo-woo universal principle, that the universe is always listening, or whether it's subconscious and you're giving your brain instructions on what to produce in the world, regardless of where it comes from, what you speak starts to become into existence. So if a parent starts speaking that my son or daughter is going to crash the car, guess what their son or daughter's subconscious is going to start saying to them?
That's exactly
Guess what they're going to start living into? So, why not encourage them to be good, safe drivers? Why not be proud when you speak to everybody and say, okay, everybody, my son or daughter is going through driver's ed and they're going to learn how to drive well, and we're going to have another safe driver on the road. Why not encourage them that way?
That's exactly right. All right, so this is an awesome segue. I want to take a real quick break and let everybody know that if you've got questions for Chuck, leave them in the comment section, and we'll circle back around and answer those at a later time. Also, if you've got an idea or for a topic or interested in potentially being a guest on the show, leave us a comment, or you can email us at info@10to20parenting.com. And now we're going to take a quick little break to hear a word from our sponsor, Be On Your Way Travel, who my friend Tim reminds us that sometimes when life gets a little too tough, you just got to make a break for it. And definitely contact them for all your travel needs. Okay, so we're on the same track. I agree with you. You don't want to, if you put that out there, so that is a perfect way to kind of step into what Teen Driving Solutions does. So let's talk a little bit about, how you guys started, you and Dan started Teen Driving Solutions, and what your mission is and the experience itself, which, full disclosure, Mackenzie and I, my oldest and I, went through this last year, and I cannot speak highly enough of it. So make sure you're taking some notes here, parents.
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me. Well, to start off with, Dan Wagner, our founder and president, had several nephews and nieces getting their license all about the same time. And Dan is one of those people that his parents taught him how to drive starting at about age 5 or 6. And what parents today don't realize is your child starts learning how to drive, how your driving habits are, or starts subconsciously taking on driving habits the day you turn the car seat facing forward. Mm-hmm. The driver's education teacher that works with them gets very little attention and very little respect because they get very little time with that teen, whereas that teen has had 15 or 14 and a half years in North Carolina of watching their parent drive. So they've learned to drive from their parents' habits. One of our instructors at TDSS, our Teen Driving Solutions School, we abbreviate TDSS. Like I said, he's a driver educator in Virginia. And he tells his parents who bring their child to him in his driver's education class, I'm going to know exactly how you drive after the first 5 minutes of riding with your teen. And it flabbergasts the parents. And he does. He can tell them exactly their driving habits, and that really flabbergasts them because they've been watching their parent drive. So if a parent's out there texting and driving because they think they're experienced enough, guess what their teen's going to do when they first start driving? So anyway, circling back around, Dan's parents actually spent time with him. They didn't put him in the driver's seat, but what they would do is say, I'm coming up on this intersection and you see there's a stop sign. So I'm going to come to a stop. I'm looking left. I'm looking right. I'm making sure things are clear. And they basically dialogued what they were doing because his parents took driving very seriously. So when it came time for him to get his license, he's been driving over 40 years now. He's driven in like 5 different countries. He's driven everything with wheels on it except for an 18-wheeler. And, he has not scratched or dented a single car, and he's driven on racetracks. He's driven, and when his nephews and nieces came to get their license, they immediately started having crashes. Some of them serious, some of them little fender benders, but they all knew Uncle Dan and how seriously Uncle Dan took driving, and he'd spent time with them talking about the seriousness of driving. Well, he said, what in the world is going on? My own family is doing this? So he started doing a little research, he decided to write a book. And in his research in his book, he found out that driving is the number one cause of death for teens in the U.S. It's actually the number one cause of death for citizens under the age of 21, so getting beyond teens. So that really struck him. He said, something's got to be done about this. It doesn't appear that anybody's doing anything about it. So I'm really going to get serious about this book and write it. Well, he got about half to three-quarters of the way through the book, and he's looking at his book going, this isn't a book. This is a program. This is, I'm writing more of a technical manual, a support manual for a program than I am an actual read it cover to cover. So then he started reaching out to people, and one thing led to another. He got in contact with me, and we formed Teen Driving Solutions School to run events, and that's kind of how we came about, if you will.
So, what can a family? Let's walk through the process for normal people.
For normal people. Well, you find us on the web at www.teendrivingsolutions.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're very non-profitable. And what I mean by that is a lot of people, when they come to our website and they see that we charge $595 for our school, they get sticker shock. Well, I will tell you, I'm just completely open about it. The parent pays $595. It costs us about $2,600 to put this on for teens. So we more than subsidize, we exponentially subsidize.
Well, and it's $595, but it's for 2 days and 2 people.
That's right. So a parent is required to come.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that's different than a lot of the other driving schools out there.
There are so many things that make us different from the other driving schools that are out there.
So let's just take it back. Okay, so I sign up, me and my child, and is there an additional charge if, like, say, both parents want to come?
Yes. We do charge a little bit extra for the other parent because we have to cover catering for them.
Right,
we provide lunches and all that stuff.
Right. So we show up, we get there, we come in on Friday night, and on Saturday morning, bright and early, we are at the racetrack, and it is at just kind of a real offshoot disclaimer. TDSS is located in right at the border of Virginia and North Carolina. So they primarily cater to that section of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. Other people drive in, but we'll talk about that later. But let's just say for this purpose, everybody that's listening to this right now is in North Carolina, which they're not. But so we show up at the Virginia International Raceway and take us from there. Okay.
Well, first of all, we are headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we are a North Carolina-based company or organization. However, as you said, our events currently take place at Virginia International Raceway. So where our organization is in North Carolina, but the events take place. We want to do it at a racetrack because it's a controlled environment, and we can replicate what goes on out on the real world. A lot of other programs out there throw a sea of cones in a parking lot, and they attempt to teach real-world exercises and experiences, and it just doesn't translate. That's been our experience. So we do it at a racetrack because we can create a ribbon of pavement that the student will follow that looks just like a road that you would normally be on, maybe minus the dashes in the middle of the road. And we teach real-world experiences. So parents show up bright and early on Saturday morning. We go through a little bit of classroom time, get everybody set up, and then we send them out to where the real learning begins, which is in the car. We provide cars, and if you want to use your own car, as long as the parent is consented of that, then the teen can use their own car. That way they're learning in the environment in which they're going to use in the real world. So from there, we start off Saturday with some low-speed exercises. We reinforce some of the things that driver's ed teaches or maybe didn't teach at all, such as parallel parking. Parallel parking is coming back in so many municipalities, but a lot of driver's ed leaves it completely out of their curriculum. So we teach some low-speed drills like that. We get them used to some vehicle dynamics. What direction does the vehicle lean when you turn the wheel? What happens when you hit the brakes? What happens when you hit the accelerator? Things like that. So we kind of build knowledge a little step at a time. They also go through what we call a maintenance clinic. Parents and teens go through this both, so that they get their hands dirty. They get under the hood. They take a look at what what is it that this machine is that is carting me around, and how am I going to know if it's ever malfunctioning? If I don't know what it looks like, sounds like, smells like when it's working correctly, how am I ever going to know if it's broken?
And speaking from experience, I don't know why I was shocked, but I was so shocked how many kids had no clue where stuff was.
None.
I mean,
no
I was so
whatsoever.
proud of Mackenzie because she was the one that she won it in her thing. She knew how to change a tire. Guess why?
and there are a lot of parents who don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
They don't know where the oil check, how to check the oil.
So many of those parents was like, "What would you do?" Like, I'd call AAA. I'm like, okay, if you live out in the country, there is no cell coverage, and now you're going to be stuck there with not knowing how.
Girl.
I mean, I was amazed. I was like, really? This is what you call AAA? Well,
what happens when your battery's dead? What happens when you're out there with no service?
Because let me tell you, Murphy's Law loves to show up in situations like that, right? And then all of a sudden you go from I'll call AAA to it's like a little horror movie that you're broken down the side of the road, you got no cell coverage, and now you got a flat tire, and now bears are going to eat you, and all because you didn't know how to change a tire. I
got to take some props here. I do. We had a parent send us an email that the very next day, we're a Saturday, Sunday school. On Monday, this parent who sent us this email, his daughter was going to a school function after school, and it was out in the country, and she had a flat tire. And our maintenance clinic, they change a tire. They don't learn how to change. They actually change a tire. She had a flat tire the very next day, and as it turns out, she was in an area where she had no cell phone coverage whatsoever, and lo and behold, because she had learned what she learned at our school, she was able to change her tire and get underway in like 30 minutes.
Good for her, and good for you. Yeah. All right, so the other cool thing about what you guys do, because we're starting to push on some time here, is you split the parents away from the kids.
That's right.
And I like that too because I learned like really young with my kids that they are completely different individuals when I'm not around. And I mean that in a positive way. And I learned that with scouts. Like if I hung around, it truly embraced the situation. Plus, it's a different, and Dr. Dar, who is your wife, does the psychological side of it. And that's kind of where I started learning the whole taking your role, how your role is going from parent to partner is really important. And I love how Dr. Dar truly goes into the psychology of it. And so many parents, it was just so great. So talk about that piece of it a little bit.
Okay. So parents have their own curriculum. Like I say, a parent is required to come. So they go through all the same driving exercises that their teen does, and they do this with the exact same instructor that their teen has. However, they don't do it at the same time. So that pressure of having the parent looking over their shoulder is not there. That parent looking over the shoulder pressure occurs when they're not with us, but the parent is riding with their new driver. And I asked the teens, how many of you feel like mom or dad yells at you when you're in the car together? And consistently, at least 90% of the hands go up. So Dr. Dar, she also has classroom sessions with the parents to teach parents how to become more of a coach in the car and support their new driver's skills, when they're in the car, instead of being a parent / what the teen sees, an ogre when they're in the car.
With the emergency brake.
Even though, and I've had this conversation with both the teens and the parents feel like their parent is yelling at them, even if their parent isn't yelling at them. The way the communication is heard by the teen is mom or dad is yelling at me. So Dr. Dar teaches that psychology of how to be a coach in the car, not a parent, when they're in there and they're driving around with one another.
But on the flip side, you guys also teach the kids how to listen to their parents, because
absolutely
that's a key thing. Because I think I try to be. I mean, are there times I'm like, oh my God, you're blah blah blah? Sure, but it's funny because Kenzie does the same thing to me, and I'm just like, oh, you're scaring me. Which I don't, just so you know. No, I'm kidding. But if we are in a real life situation and going back to okay, we're coming up to an intersection, da 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 da. I don't care, Chuck, how you say it as a parent. your kid is going to think that you're criticizing them, that you're critiquing them. I mean, you can say it with sunshine and roses, and they're still going to think that. So I like the fact that you guys go in and say, when your parents are doing this, basically what it comes down to, everybody, is that it's like, you give them a break, they'll give you a break. We're all in this together, and it's the common end is, for you to be a good and safe driver.
That's right. Dr. Dar spends some time with the teens as well, and there's homework for the teens and the parents to do together that helps structure this conversation. And we also have a teen-parent driving contract that they fill out together. The teen comes up with the suggestions for, and I'm going to use this word very loosely because I don't like this word, and it kind of goes against what we're about, but most parents will understand what I'm saying. The teen comes up with the quote-unquote punishment for themselves if they break or violate one of the policies in the contract. And if the parent doesn't feel that punishment, so to speak, is severe enough, then they have a negotiation. But the teen initiates this conversation so that there's buy-in, as opposed to the parent going, well, if you're out after your curfew, then I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to you. There's no buy-in for that. And we've all been teens at one point or another. And, when information is delivered in that way, we immediately build a resistance to it. And what's the first thing we want to go do? Yeah. What we've been told we're not supposed to do, or don't do this, don't do that. Well, of course, we're going to want to go do that because we want to find out what happens. There must be something there. So we coach both the teen and the parent on how to negotiate that agreement so that there's buy-in from both sides. And the last thing is, I ask parents to put themselves in their teen's position. There's a lot of stress when you're first learning to drive. And then you add that mom or dad is in the car with me. I'm already stressed. How do you think I'm going to hear that communication, especially if the parent truly is yelling at them because they're scared? Because the parent's going to be scared too. So it's a stressful situation.
The other thing that I like, and going back to a little bit before we wrap up, some of the other technicalities of the driving school, is that you really, the time we were there, it was a cold, rainy. Actually, it was cold on that Saturday. Yeah, it was cold on Saturday, but Sunday we got rain, and you don't cancel because of bad weather. Oh no,
we love that.
And I think it was perfect.
You know what? I used to work for a healthcare system, and they said our policy for snow days and stuff like that is when it snows, you come to work because the patients don't go home just because it snows. Well, the same thing applies to us. You know what? It's going to rain in the real world, and we're going to teach these parents and teens how to navigate wet roads safely. If it snows, we're not canceling. We're going to teach you how to drive in the snow. Whatever weather is happening, that weather could happen to you in the real world, and we're going to teach you how to deal with it.
It's like, what's the old saying? Anybody can navigate a boat on calm waters.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Exactly.
And I don't remember if it was you or if it was Dan, but I made the comment to the kids, and actually it was in that first general session where you're like, I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but at some point of this weekend, you will lose control of that car if we have to make it happen.
Absolutely. And I tell my instructors all have to go through an instructor training and certification program and things like that. We have a pretty high bar that we set for people who want to become an instructor for our organization. And I tell my instructors in the instructor training as well as in our meetings, two things. Number one, if you do not put that teen in a situation where they are completely out of control of that car, you are not doing your job. Because when it happens in the real world, it's going to be a surprise, and they need to be mentally and physically prepared for that. They need to have some muscle memory on how to dig their way out of that. And secondly, I tell them we do a 2 wheels off exercise, dropping 2 tires off the pavement and recovering improperly. The word that the news always uses, they overcorrected, is the number one cause of death in driving crashes globally, regardless of age. So we teach them how to recover properly from that off-road experience. And I tell my instructors, you want to kind of lead them up to how to correct for this situation. That's great. But once you've given them the tools, from that point on, you throw it at them as a surprise. Right. So you throw them off the road because that's how it's going to happen in the real world. That's the biggest thing for TDSS is we teach real world scenarios. We keep everything as real as we possibly can. Those other schools, and again, I don't want to take anything away from them because any type of training like this is going to help. But there's a lot of schools out there that the sea of cones in a parking lot, it's not real world.
No.
So it doesn't translate.
Well, yeah, I've yet to see cones on the highway. When I'm
Only
driving.
in a construction zone, and you're supposed to be avoiding them, and you're not going to drive through them.
So before we end, I have a couple other, I call them Chuckisms. I just made that up, but they are Chuckisms.
I call them that too.
So some of my other favorite Chuckisms that we learned over that weekend was that parents, how bad parents are, because we have this false sense of security because of the whole, well, I've been driving for 20 some years. I'm fine. I can shoot this email off real quick. And, like you said, that's our kids are watching that. And let me tell you, they really watch it after, coming out of a school like that.
Absolutely. Anyone who's listening to this, I don't care if you're a parent or not, anyone who is listening to this, let me pose a scenario for you. What I want you to do is imagine that you're driving down the road. Visualize yourself driving down the road. Now close your eyes and count to 5. 1001, 1002, count to 5. And then open your eyes. Was that a comfortable feeling? If you're driving down the road and you close your eyes for 5 seconds, do it in real life. Scare the crap out of yourself. Is that a good feeling? Well, guess what? The average amount of time it takes for you to check, not respond to, not read, just check a text, science has proven is 4.8 seconds. You're driving with your eyes closed for 4.8 seconds when you just check a text. You're completely blind to the world. You have absolutely no idea what's going on because your attention is focused on that phone. If it feels uncomfortable when you're closing your eyes, it should feel uncomfortable when that phone's in your hand. Put that phone down. Mm-hmm. It can wait. That campaign about it can wait, I am totally on board with that.
So, like we talked, Teen Driving Solutions School is relatively local to the North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia area.
Even though we've had people come from all over the U.S. who've heard about us.
I was going to say, do they? And if they can't, because not everybody can afford to, come across the country, are you guys hopefully at some point going to expand?
Yes.
B, is there anything close to what you guys do in the other parts of the country?
There's nobody that does what we do as completely as we do it. And you can call me biased, but I've looked around and I've been in the racing industry for long enough that I know where this stuff comes from. And I've worked with a good number of other teen organizations as well. There are 2 schools that come to mind. One is Skip Barber Racing School, which occasionally puts on a teen driving program, and the other is Bob Bondurant, which also occasionally puts on a teen driving program.
Is that really how you say it? I always thought it was
yes.
Bondurant.
No, it's Bob Bondurant.
Sorry, Bob.
And they come as close as anybody to what we do, and quite honestly, they're still a good ways away. And both of those programs are going to cost you close to $5,000, like $3,500 to $3,700 just to get in the door, something like that. So they're a lot more expensive than us, and they don't have near the curriculum that we do. But those are located in the Phoenix, Arizona area and California. But like I say, we've had people come from all over the country just because they've heard that we really do have the best curriculum going out there. And there are lots of other programs. There's a program that is sponsored by Tire Rack. It is also sponsored by the Sports Car Club of America and BMW Car Club of America. So it's called Street Survival. It's a one-day program, and it costs like $100. It's not going to be near what we do, but it's a great program, and it does, about 3 or 4 of the exercises that we do. There's another program here in North Carolina called Brakes. The teens named it from Doug Herbert, the NHRA driver who lost 2 of his sons in a crash because his son had some overconfidence and ended up in a crash and killed himself and his little brother. So they started a program called Brakes. Brakes stands for Be Responsible and Keep Everyone Safe.
That's cute.
It's an acronym.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That program costs $100 up front, but they'll give you your money back if you want it back. So it ostensibly is free, and it's a half-day program, and they teach basically the four emergency exercises. They teach emergency lane change, braking in a straight line, and skid recovery and distraction. So they cover, four very basic skills, but it, again, is a good program, and certainly their heart's in the right place. And they run that program in several different cities across the U.S. as well.
Okay, so one thing before we end this, I want to tell everybody, if you go to the 10 to 20 site and click on our YouTube icon, one of the videos that's on there is actually some back seat footage of my oldest going through one of the obstacle courses. Yeah, so I actually did that from the back. It was pretty funny to give you an idea of some of the real life situations and how some of the instructors work. So Chuck, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you or how they can find you.
They can find us at www.teendrivingsolutions.org. We're on Facebook as Teen Driving Solutions School, and we're on Twitter as Teen Driving Sol, S-O-L. So those are the three major access points for us. If you want to reach out to me directly, my email address is chuckh@teendrivingsolutions.org, and our phone number is 919-552-5775.
Awesome. Well, that's our show this week, friends. So thanks for tuning
in.
Oh, wait,
if I can, I want to leave you. I want to leave you with one thing to think about.
Okay. On
average, a teen dies somewhere on our roads every 90 minutes, 24/7, 365. Every 90 minutes. That is absolutely atrocious. There is no excuse for that, and there is no reason for that, and somebody's got to do something about it, and that is why TDSS exists.
And why we're grateful that you do. All right, friends, then let's make sure that you, I'm going to edit that out, I hope. Hopefully I can figure out how to edit that out. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to give myself a little pause here. All right, so that's our show this week. Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure you subscribe to our podcast on either iTunes or Stitcher or both. And if you could please leave us a review and a rating on iTunes, we'd really appreciate it because that helps other people find our show. Don't forget to leave a comment if you have a question. And remember, you can find these kind of topics and more at our site, 10to20.com. You can also find all the links and the phone numbers and websites that we referenced during the show as well. Our theme music is Sunshine from Kevin McLeod. I am Kristen Dokas, and thank you again to Chuck Hawks of Teen Driving Solutions School for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And until next week, friends, remember that the time between 10 and 20 is really just an age and not a sentence.